This is an occasion of great significance for members of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints throughout the world. Dating from October 10th, 1880, when John Taylor was sustained to succeed Brigham Young as prophet, seer, and revelator, and president of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. It is proposed that we sustain Dallin Harris Oakes as president of the Quorum of the 12 Apostles of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. Those in favor, please signify. Any opposed may manifest it. It is proposed that we sustain members of the Quorum of the 12 Apostles as prophets, seers, and revelators. All in favor, please manifest it. Contrary, if any, by the same sign.
Travis Wingoodsell. So the cyberistic terrorism continues into week number 2 as the church is on a full-on attack because Armageddon is so close and they don't want me ruining it for them, to murder you, to get their doctrine of Lucifer in full view of the world who survives. In the coming days, Albert Pike. So, after uploading the video and checking those who commented, there was a Get Piffy who was looking up religious links between who owns ghetto gangers and Hebrew is Greek and their Genesis. And YouTube recommended my channel. For Utah Mormon judge grants Mormon Tyler Robinson can dress in his magic underwear in disguise. So I linked him to Hebrew is Greek. The document. The document. I did put that picture up, didn't I? I did the whole... It's unbelievable. Thought I was prepared. Humiliations galore. Humiliations galore. By Yosef Yehuda, LLB. Published by Beckett Publications, Oxford, 1982. There's conspiracy behind this book. When it was published, 1982, with a preface by Professor Saul Levin, it went out to the world publications for bookstores and all such. Went into university libraries and all such. And then all of a sudden, it's pulled from all bookstores, all libraries, university libraries. It's gone. And those who knew of it were deeply concerned that some power that controls the world had the ability to cover it up and hide it from the world. And then I found it in the University of Utah Library. It was donated by a person who had died from his library collection, personal library collection. And there were others that emerged as having had it, so that when the internet became available, it was now digitally made available to all the world again, for free. because it's, the copyright is no longer in play. And so I, likewise, immediately obtained my copy of it. As I had it printed, but now I got it in digital form. And so, having deciphered Paleo-Hebrew, I know exactly what's going on here. This will wait. This has to do with why the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints can't translate worth a lick when they're supposed to. Section 107, verse 91 and 92. This is the office of the first presidency of Joseph Smith's church and the duties of the office. And again, the duty of the president of the office of the high priesthood is to preside over the whole church and to be like unto Moses. Notice it's not Peter. Behold, here is wisdom to be a seer, to be a revelator, to be a translator, and to be a prophet, not in title, but having all the gifts of God which he bestows upon the head of the church. This is not a title position where you've now got the title of president of the church. Getting all excited. You demonstrate the gifts. You predict the future. You have dreams. You have calendar dates and clock times of the future predictions. And you translate Paleo-Hebrew and Egyptian. In case you don't know this, it's repeated numerous times in the Book of Mormon with a number of different characters. For example, it's footnoted to 92a in Mosiah chapter 8. And it's Ammon speaking with King Limhi after he escaped from the Lamanites coming in and burning King Noah with tiki torches, just as he burned Abinadi with tiki torches. And so King Limhi asked Ammon if he can translate the records that he had found while fleeing. And he says, I know of a man like Moses, Mosiah. Moses, Yah, the Hebrew God. Moses, man like Moses. The king of the Nephites in Zarahemla. If you remember that story. And the king then responds, a seer is greater than a prophet. And Ammon said, a seer is a revelator and a prophet also. Such that seer is both revelator and prophet, but revelator and prophet are also independent in and of themselves. But you need to be a prophet for a revelation and a revelation for a prophecy. And all of this, Paleo-Hebrew and Egyptian. Translate. Interpreters. Lehi. He's a prophet. He has dreams as a seer. He gets a calendar date and clock time of the prediction of the future as a revelator, and then goes in an exodus from Jerusalem as the man like Moses. A very simple pattern in the learning of the Jews. that no Mormon should ever be confused on this. So when you run the 3 Nephi 14 from Matthew chapter 7, starting in verse 15 to 20, every Mormon should run the test on their first president to see if he has the gifts. And the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints do not even claim as a title, let alone the gift, of translator. The Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, by their own admission, are false. They cannot be true if they don't have everything that is necessary to lead the church as the head of the church. They are liars and frauds, deceiving and stealing, setting you up to be murdered in the coming day. Very plain, pure, and most precious to understand, so that no Mormon should be confused. So the church first got exposed in this valley by a man named R.T., whatever that religious title stands for, Reverend F.S. Spalding. And it's Solomon Spalding is the middle name. I don't know what the F stands for. And he's a DD, a double D. He was the Baptist Bishop of Utah. And in November 1912, he published a book by the Arrow Press at 66 West 2nd South in Salt Lake City, Utah. What gall! Anybody remember that from how many months ago? Joseph Smith Jr. as a translator. An inquiry conducted by the Reverend. And this shattered the church, especially after November came around, or December came around, with the publication of the New York Times. Museum walls proclaim fraud of Mormon prophet. Sacred books claimed to have been given divinely to the first prophet are shown to be taken from old Egyptian originals, their translation being a work of the imagination. What a comparison with Metropolitan Museum treasures show. Front page news. Even though it was magazine section part 5. I don't know. So I guess you had to go in, to find it. And so, yeah, they had the picture of the Salt Lake Temple, facsimile number 2 with the hypocephalus, and then there's some scarab beetles with wings that they gave it. And then there's another version of a hypocephalus. And then facsimile number 1 and facsimile number 3 are shown. And then there's an actual photo printed of canoptic jars at some museum or at the Metropolitan Museum of Art, since they were there in New York. And just rips Joseph Smith to shreds. Now, because Brigham Young said that we are the authorized successors of Joseph Smith, violating verse 22 of that same section, they then took the brunt of it. The Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, who don't want, let alone know, translation. They have no clue how Joseph Smith did it. And so they just ignored it, hope it went away. And then, oops, Metropolitan Museum of Art found it. Solomon Spaulding the Reverend Spaulding found out about it, published his book. A month later, the New York Times. They gave the documents to the church because, well, that President Richards from the England mission did the pamphlet, including 1842's Times and Seasons of Joseph Smith, publishing what he had done in 1838 on the Book of Abraham, with the 3 facsimiles. Only those 3. Why just those 3, Joseph? Why just those? Those of you who followed my channel know exactly why just those. As he published also the 1838 History of the Church. Wait, Joseph, you didn't put the right name of the church. And it's not the angel Moroni. You said it's Nephi. Is this an error? Were you wrong? You edited this to have it published. Are you wrong? Isn't this the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints? No. We're not rehashing that again for this. Because obviously the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints is false. They don't even claim translator. Remember? Church is already false. And yet Mormons will still lie and deny to their dying breath to try to create some excuse to claim the church is still somehow true. You can't do it. It can't be done. The living prophets of Jesus themselves tell you by denouncing translator that they're false. Is this too complicated for your brains? And so I get cyber terrorized by Mormons through back to President Oaks now to shut me up and keep you from knowing what they themselves tell you. I'm not creating a new Mormonism. What the bleep is wrong with you? Let's see. So, yeah, first we go to Mark Hoffman. So time went by. R.C. Webb. Oh my God. Jumped ahead. The next year, May 1913, a pseudonym, a pen name, a nom de plume, whatever you call it, calling himself R.C. Webb. Robert C. Webb. He specifically went around trying to make his living off of lost causes. To try to, improve his character has nothing to do with proving that the church is true. He's not Mormon. He heard about this and went, okay, I'll take this on. And Heber J. Grant paid him. Not only for his published work in the Improvement Era, Volume 16, Number 7, May 1913, pages 691 to 702, thanks to Book of Mormon Central, who believe that he put Spalding in his place. We showed you. He would then go on to publish it in the book form to use actual pictures in the book, and it should be fair access because the copyright no longer applies, and yet you can't get it unless you pay for the book, which I have. But nonetheless, getting the PDF of it is nearly impossible, so I have to get my book, get it scanned to be a PDF. Zion Project, assuming we're going to have Zion. Mormons don't want Zion. They want to die for Jesus. He's going to burn them. And so it is a fascinating thing. It's wrong, but it is fascinating. As it helped me when I was looking for research on the Paleo-Hebrew decipherment, working on the vocabulary. I had obtained his book from a used bookstore here in Utah, who the guy is now in prison. Or was that just rust? I know rust coins got busted. Maybe it was the used bookstore. It at least got shut down. Whether he moved or not, I don't know. But anyway, rust coin, yeah. My ex-brother-in-law took me there, and he just wanted to show off about how he can have access to look at high-valued coins, and was joking about stealing them. Tiffany. Con marrying a con. Nonetheless, they're divorced. The con was up for both of them. She got the kids. Anyway. So, not going to go into RC Web. We're already at 22 minutes. I'm already pissed that I will not be left alone ever until this church falls and crumbles to the dust and to the hell where they belong. So, Hal Knight, Church News staff writer, continued on page 4. But this was the big spotlight, showing the photograph of Mark Hoffman, showing off the Salamander letter to Spencer W. Kimball, N. Eldon Tanner, Hugh B. Brown, Marion G. Romney, Gordon B. Hinckley, who's pointing to the scriptures. See, there's the salamander right there. It's proof. They're in the Old Testament, of course. Not because this doesn't show what date it was when this was done, but it would have soon after been the 80s. It wasn't until the late 80s when people started to catch on that he was a con artist and a forger, and so he decided to cover up and hide his forgeries to expose the prophets as frauds and start blowing people up, and he blew himself up, and thus, oh, we got him, we got the DNA all over the place. It was gross. Splattered everywhere. He's in prison now. They still had a trial for him. He didn't confess. What's up with that? Anyway, whatever the case. Boyd K. Packer. There in the background. Boyd K. Packer. Little factory. Banned! So yeah, this again humiliated the church. That they couldn't even discern a forged document. And yet, they also again tried to cover it up and hide it in their archives, just like with the papyri that they failed to cover up and hide. So in August 1992, the first presidency under President Ezra Taft Benson, Gordon B. Hinckley, and Thomas S. Monson, August 1992, came out with the first presidency statement on the King James Version of the Bible. This is the document that they, at the church office building for the Priesthood Curriculum Committee, as it was called back then, gave me when starting my work on the footnoting revision project from the 2000s to 2004. We had to do a double term because of the massive overhaul that it needed. I did the video the other week. 2.5 hours, was it? Dear God. Or was it 3.5? The first presidency has released the following letter regarding the King James Version of the Bible. And so when I got this, I went, oh God. I deciphered Paleo-Hebrew, proved that Joseph Smith and the King Follett sermon was correct. And I get this. Really? I scientifically prove Joseph Smith was correct. And you give me this? That Ezra Taft Benson, with Gordon B. Hinckley and Thomas S. Monson all confessing, we're not translators, we don't have the gift, and therefore we're frauds. Me, who has the gift, facepalming that Tom Jones, a born-again Christian in Southern California as a kid, on a parallel or perpendicular street in Corona, was right that our church is wrong. Unbelievable. I paid money for this church to sacrifice candy. I get endowed in the Los Angeles temple, horrified of what the hell is this? I've got to kill myself? Getting a wedgie? Old creepy man putting on my underwear? And tucking it in? Get your hand out of there. What the hell kind of a church is this? It was bad enough as a kid after I get baptized at 8 years old in one day that my mom now says, oh yeah, you can't eat anymore on Fast Sunday. What? I'm hungry. I'm a growing big boy. What do you mean I can't eat? Well, studies at BYU said. I don't give a bleep what they they claim. I just asked you, what does this say, Mommy? The facsimiles. And she said, when you go to the temple and get endowed, the Spirit will tell you. Okay. And so I got endowed, and the Spirit didn't tell me. I had to do the research. But I got my answers. And this ain't the answer. Dear God. Since the days of the prophet Joseph Smith, the Church of Jesus, well, that was wrong. That wasn't the name of his church. Of Latter-day Saints has used the King James Version of the Bible. In other words, it was a secret combination of the Danites led by Brigham Young under Joseph Smith, who did not know of them, but knew of them, but didn't know of them specifically. For English-speaking members, the Bible, as it has been transmitted over the centuries, has suffered the loss of many plain and precious parts. And he won't go over into detail, as Hinckley did in his conference talk. We believe the Bible to be the Word of God as far as it is translated correctly. We also believe the Book of Mormon to be the Word of God. So we need to translate the Bible correctly in order for it to be the Word of God. Is that complicated? Well, many versions of the Bible are available today. Unfortunately, no original manuscripts or any portion of the Bible are available for comparison to determine the most accurate versions. Wrong. As a person who doesn't know, yeah, I would expect that excuse. Dear God. However, the Lord has revealed clearly the doctrines of the gospel in these latter days. So retranslate the Bible correctly then. No, that's not what we mean. The most reliable way to measure the accuracy of any biblical passage is not by comparing different texts, but by comparison with the Book of Mormon's plagiarized portions and modern-day plagiarisms. What the bleeping hell kind of church is this? So yes, you guys know about Jeremy Runnels and his CES letter. Plagiarisms. And then Kwaku comes out to apologize as a new convert, knowing nothing. Plagiarism is proof of the truth. Kwaku. Oh, Kwaku. I lost Kimberly over this crap. Charity. Technically, I use this to measure the accuracy of the Bible passage in 1 Corinthians 13 for charity. It's love. The Book of Mormon says it's love. It's not charity, it's love. Ta-da! And then I lost Kimberly, because she believed that what they were telling us, and that is what they were telling us, is that the Book of Mormon creates new definitions of falsely translated words from the New Testament, and some from the Old Testament. While other Bible versions may be easier to read, only the church's children's version is approved. And the King James Version, in doctrinal matters, Luther's German text is the most Nope. Joseph Smith's King Philip sermon. Joseph Smith comes out and says Luther's German text is the most accurate doctrinally with our religion in the New Testament. And here, he just disses on the King Follett sermon of Joseph Smith by saying in doctrinal matters, Latter-day Revelation supports the King James Version, when the Book of Mormon clearly doesn't, because it has to correct everything in it to measure the accuracy in preference to other English translations. Oh, dear God. Even the Catholics got charity right by turning it into love. Oh, my God. All of the presidents of the church, beginning with Brigham, not Joseph, have supported the King James Version. Well, there's the Revised King James Version. There's the Book of Mormon revisions. There's Doctrine and Covenants revisions. There's Joseph Smith revision, if I didn't mention that in the beginning. And then there's the Book of Abraham revision. What the hell makes you think that Joseph Smith supported the King James Version? Mormons are confused as to why there are so many different versions of the creation story alone. And the church claims that, well, we support the King James Version, even though it's not the Word of God, by encouraging its continued use in church. In light of all the above, a fallacy argument is about to be concluded. It is the English language Bible used by the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. Thank you, Travis. And then he goes on and explain the footnotes Bible Dictionary Topical Guide. And then the next September 6th, all hell breaks loose. We now know about a rock and a hat. Shh, you're not supposed to tell. You gotta kill yourselves now. Oaks comes out and says, yeah, we had a strengthening church members committee organized for Mark Hoffman's trial. And any other of you who dare apostatize, like September 6th that we just fired and excommunicated the previous month. We're watching for you. We're going to destroy you. I mean, bring you back into activity in the church. With extortion threats, cyber terrorism, murder, theft, etc. Gee, I'm convinced I better come back to church. Bleep you. They know it never works, and they keep doing it. What does that mean they are? Oh, can you explain with your tardive dyskinesia why it never works, folks? Mentally retarded. So yeah, I've demonstrated the gifts all these years. Do you understand what that means, Mormons? Oh, you're not listening anymore? It's my Mormon crickets. Nonetheless. So to finish it off, going back to Joseph Yehuda to explain that. Because I would need to, because the guy, he thinks that Hebrew is Greek, but this will lead him in the wrong direction. You need to put history in proper chronological order and not take something that was first started in one year and put it back in time in another year where it did not belong or exist. That is vital to understanding Joseph Yehuda's work. He used the biblical Hebrew text with the Septuagint Greek text. He doesn't really go over the Bible, but it's biblical Hebrew that he's using, and the Greek is Koine Greek. And he does a comparison between the vocabularies from both, because Hebrew, it really doesn't have much in the way of documents other than from the Bible. And so that's the basis for his whole entire research, that once it got published and placed everywhere around the world, was secretly pulled. But this is easily explainable. His work is correct to expose the biblical Hebrew text as a multi-personality disorder that I've been telling you about. Paleo-Hebrew is different than Babylonian Hebrew, which is different from Aramaic, which is different from Arabic, which is different from Biblical Hebrew. There's some other variants. Mesopotamian cuneiform have similarities from which Babylonian Hebrew developed. When Babylon conquered Jerusalem and took them back to Babylon, they destroyed their language in Babylon. Paleo-Hebrew is destroyed. And that's when they tried to pull a Rosetta Stone with Mesopotamian and the new alphabet that Paleo-Hebrew was. It was the first alphabet invented. And so what the Babylonians tried to do is apply the Mesopotamian cuneiform and merge it into the condensed alphabet of Paleo-Hebrew. And one of the first alphabets from Mesopotamia was Aramaic. But it uses different pictures than Paleo-Hebrew. It is not the same language. But the phonemes were being developed around this time period with this. The Greeks, having created vowel letters from Paleo-Hebrew, which they also originated from, and then adding extra characters for consonants and for vowels, were the first attempt to turn this alphabetical script into a speakable language. It was a picture language, an ideographic language, a visionary language. And so, by capturing the Jews with Paleo-Hebrew, and even used by northern Israel, as the Phoenicians had their capital in Beirut, Lebanon, which were conquered 700 by the Assyrians. And so that's when the Mesopotamia knew the language in order to trade with the Phoenicians. But when the Jews got captured, that's when you're starting to see this. Now, there are those who say that Aramaic was developed by the Assyrians, in that Aramaic was formed several hundred years after Paleo-Hebrew was invented. That may be the case. And so that Jewish Paleo-Hebrew became Babylonian Hebrew, using the Aramaic phonemes to be placed onto the Paleo-Hebrew as a result of that process, because of their creation of their own alphabet called Aramaic. And so then over time, you got the Greeks who take over after Persians took over, and then Rome, and then Constantine, and he screws it all up, turning the Jewish scriptures into literal histories, anachronisms, going back in time to say, hey, this guy from 325 years ago is our Jesus. He's the same guy because we said so. Must be true. No, you can't do that. You weren't in existence then. You can't claim that as your Christ. You can preach the teachings of that Christ. That's perfectly fine, but you can't take the Old Testament as you created and say that they're prophecies of your Christ in the Roman period time, with only 4 out of the 100 plus other gospels that you rejected because of the first creed. So with the first creed of Christianity, you've got all of these different languages that have been in existence. The Hittites, Canaanites, Phoenicians, Egyptians, Mesopotamians that involve Sumerians, Old and New Assyrians and Babylonians and Persians and Greeks and Romans, all of these different languages. And then about 100 years after the first creed of Christianity, Christians are now saying we need a Bible, and we're going to use the template of the first creed to determine which is approved for our Bible and which have to be rejected. And so Jesus being married has to be rejected. Mary being a temple prostitute has to be rejected. Those kinds of scriptures. Other persons like Perseus or Hercules flying on a white horse from outer space, that obviously can't be true. Oh, here's one by a guy named John in a book called Apocalypse. Oh, yeah, it has Jesus flying on a white horse. Yeah, that one's true. We'll allow that one. I'm a little concerned about dragons and frogs and beasts. But Revelation 12, that's obviously Jesus' birthday. December 25th, 1 CE. It has nothing to do with the future and a Jewish Christ. None whatsoever. It's Jesus. And so the Bible is created. The Dead Sea Scrolls were not written all in Greek. Only a few of them were from the Bible, the Old Testament. A good number of them were Paleo-Hebrew, like Genesis, Isaiah. And yet, the Septuagint is claiming to be a translation of the Paleo-Hebrew. They didn't even bother to do a letter-for-letter match across. They created words that aren't there. You know, like, in the beginning. King Follett Zerman. And the reason why they were able to solidify their version of the Bible was by making up stories, called lies. Claiming that during the Dead Sea Scroll time of the Greeks, pre-Dead Sea Scrolls of the Greeks, because the Septuagint, if you try looking it up, they'll say, oh yeah, it comes from the Greek period of 300 BCE to when the Romans took over in the Ptolemaic period. That's what, yeah. And so the story goes that 72 Jews who were Hellenized knew both Greek and Hebrew, and it depends on which Hebrew they're talking about. Could be Aramaic. Independently were inspired by Jesus as Jews to translate exactly the same books that were approved of for the Christian Bible, Old Testament. Not the others, just those. And they combined them also, just like that Christian did, into the Septuagint, meaning 70, rather than 72. And they happen to bump into each other at some party or gathering or something like that, and then said, oh, you too? I did one. We should compare. They all got together. They all compared. Oh my God, it's all exactly the same. Letter for letter, word for word, sentence for sentence, book for book. It's exactly the same about Jesus coming. The church is true. Faith Persian, and thus the Septuagint. So in 600 CE, Islam comes along with Muhammad, a Babylonian outcast, when Persia came in and destroyed it and took over the land, chasing the survivors into the Saudi Arabian desert. And then after some 900 years, then came Muhammad being born in Saudi Arabia as one of those descendants of the Babylonians who oppressed the Jews. And he created the Quran in Arabic script, which, yes, has a lot of similarities because he copied, only doing a different form of script, like Brigham Young's Deseret script alphabet. He really didn't create a new language, he just did a replacement, so that every letter in the phonetics was assigned a different shape of the letter. So as long as you know the comparison chart, it's easy to read Deseret. But Brigham Young tried to be sneaky so that the United States wouldn't know what they're plotting against them for. We're so clever. But anyway, so then, 800, which is 500 years after Constantine, 400 years after the Septuagint and the Latin Vulgates, which, yes, also the same. There are some differences. The Septuagint also had the Apocrypha. Latin Vulgate had some other additions from the Apocrypha and others. Too much information for you at the moment. 800 CE. A group of, several groups, or at least two, Masoretes, as they are now called. Masoretic Jews decide to create the Masoretic text. They want their Bible. And so they get together in their different committees. And you can see that as you go through the different books, which Masoretic group did which. Because of the feminine ending is the big reveal. For example, the one group used the "a" at the end for the feminine singular. The other group used the Egyptian version of the "t" as the feminine singular. Masculine singular for one group was left blank. The other group put the Y-I, because if I call it Yod, it'll lead you to believe that Paleo-Hebrew has the Yod. It doesn't. Babylonian Semitic, or Babylonian Hebrew, remember, with Aramaic. So you can't do that. I can't professionally say it's the Yod. Because it's the zeta in Greek. And so this is why Hebrew is Greek. Is because they used all of the different languages to try to explain the Septuagint of those that weren't in original Greek, pre-Constantine. The ones pre-Constantine that were in Greek, yeah, they could trust those, and those are fine. But the ones that weren't, like the book of Genesis, are not fine. But, so for Genesis chapter 1, for example, instead of "in the beginning," the Jews changed it to "when God began to create the heavens and the earth being without form and void." So it's a continuation into the next verse from the Septuagint to be one verse. Still a mistranslation. Because you've got already two different languages of the two different groups, if not more, already working on them and combining them together as one. But because of the transmogrification of the various languages over time, just like America, we have English. It's not British English, but it is British English, but it's also a whole bunch of other languages from all over the world. A croissant, for example, that's obviously Chinese. French toast, French cuisine, American. It's a very confusing language when you're trying to learn it as a second language. suffer as an American learning for the first time. What do you mean I before E except after C? Except in this circumstance. What are you talking about? Who made this language? And why can I not be hung as a human? I have to be hanged. But I can hung a picture on a wall. Who made this language? And yeah, it's the British part of it. The British had rules. And in America, with the multi-personality disorder that it's become, is such that the rules can't apply anymore. And yet there are those purists who have to have the rules for those particular words from England. We specifically changed words, being American, after the Revolutionary War, so that instead of saying hell, like the Brits did, instead of saying heck, like the Brits did, we say hell. I botched that. And so we in America, who are religious, think that hell is the bad word, and so we revert back to saying heck, which was the bad word for the Brits, which they said hell instead. Just stupid. Stupid. And so, yes, they took from Latin, from Greek, from Persian, from Babylonian, from Aramaic, from Arabic, from, to try to harmonize the scriptures from the Latin, or the Septuagint mostly, to try to render a translation of the Aramaic script form of the biblical Hebrew from the Dead Sea Scrolls, which is the closest match. It is just awful. A multi-personality disorder. When you combine different definitions of words into a document. And so that's how I was able to decipher the vocabulary of Paleo-Hebrew after deciphering the alphabet, is that I strip the biblical Hebrew of all the vowels that they added in and the vowel points and the marks, and restored it to its Paleo-Hebrew, and then searched to run the test for one linguistic pattern that would fit. Thus, Joseph Smith is correct. Unbelievable. So, very simple to do. Nobody else wanted to do it. All hell's breaking loose. So, there you go. They will not leave me alone when they themselves say they're false. So if you're false, why are you still pushing that you're true? Why are you making Mormons stupid in the eyes of the world?